Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Are you
a Marxist?
A Marxist.
But the point of the right has started calling everybody Marxists. Trump was doing the Marxists, the agitators, the looters, the rioters thing from a speech in his first term. But this is really ramped up with Caroline Leavitt constantly saying Marxist. Fox News has ramped up the Marxist talk.
It does feel like Marxism is making a comeback.
Stephen Miller's been saying it about everybody who disagrees with Trump.
Does this make me an anti-capitalist, that I'm simply making the observation that the current trend we're on is unsustainable?
I'm not making... Welcome back to the Ed Front Show, or at least this episode, where we will seek to educate people on not only kind of what's happening, but what might be a solution to the issues that we're facing. I think that's a big thing, of not feel so down and depressed about everything.
Rather than just whining.
Yeah, we're gonna heed some comments. We're gonna want to listen to them and not just complain. We're gonna talk about.
By the way, just to introduce that.
Oh yeah.
It's not that there wouldn't be some things to complain about this week.
Plenty to complain about. I'll run them over real quick.
Just a few days ago.
Habeas corpus, apparently, where we're going to get rid of it again for the 5th time. We are arresting mayors now.
Yep, the mayor of Newark.
Continued random plainclothes agents arresting...
Masked,
arresting moms with babies. And
yes, a dramatic video is starting to come out of arrests.
Very dramatic videos,
Arrests in the streets of women. By the way, clearly English-speaking women as well, which I think is almost an even worse look. It's already a terrible look.
Yeah, it's not even like they're trying to pretend to be like, oh, you heard in the video this lady is an immigrant. It's like a lady like, what are you doing here? In like the most American accent.
Stop it. Don't put your hands on me.
Like the most American accent I've ever heard. Yeah, so there's plenty of horrible fascistic things happening, but I don't want to just be the show where it's every week we come in and we're just like, it's terrible here, and look how horrible it is. Because we could do that. I could do that every hour of the day for the next almost 4 years.
It's taxing, and I don't think we're bringing any value to the conversation.
I want to bring in a potential solutions and answers, at least something to think about.
Open a discussion.
At least open a discussion, because something needs to be done.
For a serious listener?
Not much is really being done.
Okay, I agree.
So we need to really open this. So
after this presidency is over...
The world isn't over. There's still something needs to happen.
Right. There's going to be another election in 2028. Yep. Apparently Trump this week says, no, I guess I'm not really running for 2028. So, that may change again, but whatever. So bottom line is the world will
continue to move.
Will go on. Our country will continue to go on.
Hopefully everybody watching will still be alive. Cross your fingers.
And we do need to make a plan on what we're going to do about it specifically.
Agreed.
What are the solutions and plans, and what will need to be fixed and repaired and rebuilt?
What needs to be changed?
But now that it's all ripped down, what can we change and edit?
Yeah, we're at a point where the government is moldable, probably more than it usually is.
A good way to say
probably is more moldable than it typically is. So we'll take advantage of this.
At a time when this is the first time in American history where a 40-year-old, I think it is less well off than their parents were. This is the first time that
where the newer generations are having it harder than their parents.
It's always gotten better. With every generation throughout American history,
it's gotten better.
It's gotten better
one way or
for
another.
the kids in some way, right? It's
but
improving.
We're regressing.
We are now going backwards for the first time in history.
The world will continue to spin around the sun after his presidency, and
we need to make a plan.
Something needs to be done now, but something needs to not let this happen again.
Okay.
We can't allow something like this to happen again. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about it, and it's going to be a little bit roundabout. Well, we're going to get there. We'll make it a few things.
Okay, let's get there.
So this is a tweet from New York Conservative. It's just an account that I interact with. It's not really a big account, 7,000 followers.
All right, so you're on Twitter right now. This is what you want to go over.
We're starting here. It leads
to something.
To what we were just talking about before we recorded.
Okay, let's stick it up on the screen. This is a
so I'll put it up. So
this is a tweet from
NBC News, little screenshot. Their friendship has tightened in the Trump administration. Each has worked to cultivate and maintain relationships with tastemakers. Is that really right?
Thought leader.
Okay, thought leader. I've never heard that word before.
What's your taste?
Okay.
And then it's like, well, that's what
tastemaker
that guy likes, so we all like the same thing. That's what
I understand.
He likes.
Okay, well, educating. Learn something new every day. On the far right, Vance and Rubio both, for example, were among the guests at an inaugural ball hosted by Turning Point USA, a group led by influential far-right activist Charlie Kirk.
A tastemaker.
I would assume no controversy in this. This is a very simple, easy little post. The screenshot from NBC News.
Their friendship has tightened in the Trump administration. Each has worked to cultivate and maintain relationships with tastemakers, influencers on the far right. Vance and Rubio both, for example, were among the guests at an inaugural ball hosted by Turning Point USA, which is led by none other than
influential far-right activist Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk.
So this is a thing I read, and I think this is unbiased media reporting.
That seems as straightforward as you can say it.
This account tweets out, NBC News calling Charlie Kirk far-right is so insanely stupid. So then I reply, is Charlie Kirk not far-right?
You asked the question.
Yeah, I asked, is he not far-right? Like, that seems like a very, again, just an observation.
Fine.
Very obviously no.
Very obviously not far-right.
To which I say, there's no way you believe that.
Okay.
To which he says, I mean, I'm not a deranged leftist, so of course I do.
What would he consider the far-right then?
That's a great question that I didn't ask.
Anyway, so what was the point that this guy made that really ruffled your feathers?
Well, one, he was calling Charlie Kirk not far right. So then I'm scared of what far right means and what a centrist is. Really nervous.
Okay.
But anyway, so
he then goes on to say,
he didn't even say it. It's somebody else now.
Oh, okay. Someone else is chiming in.
But this is, I want to give the whole context of the interaction.
Perfect.
Anyway, this guy says, just FYI, calling people far right when they may not necessarily be far right will delegitimize it for when you call someone like Nick Fuentes far right. All you're doing is watering down what it means. So when someone is actually far right, nobody cares that they're being called far right. I would say that Charlie Kirk is not very far away from Nick Fuentes. You don't know who that is, I don't think.
I do.
Okay, you should.
I do.
Kanye West. They're not really far apart, these two people. Someone else says, kind of like calling anyone on the left commies and Marxists, yet the right continues to do so. And then the guy again says, I 100% agree. I'm glad we both agree. I don't call neolibs commies or Marxists or even AOC or Bernie for that matter. They're just abhorrently stupid though. So I don't care about the abhorrently stupid part. This whole thing spurred on just like a few minutes ago before we started recording of, A, Charlie Kirk's not far right. That's lunatic speak.
Interesting.
But the point of the right has started calling everybody Marxists. Trump was doing the Marxists, the agitators, the looters, the rioters thing from a speech in his first term. But this is really ramped up with Caroline Leavitt constantly saying Marxist. Fox News has ramped up the Marxist talk.
It does feel like Marxism is making a comeback.
Stephen Miller's been saying it about everybody who disagrees with Trump. So that term is back in the
It's back in play.
It's back in play, which is very weird. I don't understand.
Yes.
And Kamala Harris was getting hit with a lot of like Marxist accusations, like way more than Bernie ever was.
Kamala of all people.
It was such a, like, saw so many people saying, oh, she's a communist, more than Biden and Bernie.
During the election?
During the election.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is an unusual amount of Red Scare that we're pulling off for, famous radical Marxist.
Just to remind everybody, how many years ago did Karl Marx?
He was born in 1818.
So this is a 175-year-old.
And he passed in 1883.
Yeah, he wrote.
Famously, the Communist Manifesto. About everybody's heard of that before.
Which is a 175-year-old document.
That was written in 1848. So yes, a very old document, which I promise if you've read, again, it's also very short. It doesn't say anything you think it says in there. By the way.
Yeah.
It's funny when people reference it. But anyway, so this term Marxism has really come back, and I wanted to talk about it a bit.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Maybe educate some people.
Yeah.
The point being is you made a great point, and I'll let you talk about it, is the system we're currently living in, capitalism or whatever modern variation of capitalism we're living under, is unsustainable, is what you said.
Yes.
I'll expand on that a little bit.
Right.
As a preface before we talk about.
Well, and also just to differentiate as well, we're not talking about democracy. We're not talking about our form of government.
Yeah, no, not the structure of the government.
We're talking about the structure of the economy.
The economy and kind of the systems that influence things, but not like the shape and structure of the government. You're right.
Yes, right. So it's very simple to see that the economic structure that we have in place, which is a hyper revved up and hyper unregulated capitalist approach, it's easy to look at, the graph on the screen that shows, the wealth inequality
So bad,
over time and how that is on an exponential. We have to go this way
yeah,
further.
this way.
So it's on an exponential, so curving upward.
Getting worse every year.
So it's, yes, increasing at an increasing rate is the mathematical language for the nerds out there. So it's easy to say that that is not a sustainable model in the long term. Eventually there's going to be something that breaks down. I mean, what happens when we don't even get a paycheck at all because they have all of the money and the power?
So much money's been hoarded away. And
I mean, ultimately,
inflation's rampant because the system's falling apart.
Right.
What happens then? Yeah.
But if you think about it, if you play that graph out and you continue to allow the wealth, which is to say the wealth and the power and control, because the power and control goes with the wealth.
Yeah, hand in hand.
If you allow the wealth to continue to consolidate, was the word I was looking for, into fewer and fewer people or entities, and you pull more and more of the wealth away, the more
Scraping
the more you pull away from the population, the more wealth you pull away from the population means the less wealth you have. Can you think of a group of people in the 1860s that had no use for money and wealth and funds because they didn't get paid for any of the work that they did all day long on the plantation?
There is a group of people.
So if you play that graph out to its end, where all of the wealth has been extracted, then you're back to slavery. Right?
Or at best, some form of modern feudalism.
Thank you.
Where the lords
Well
of
said.
business
Well said.
reign over and own everything.
Trickle just enough money to barely live.
Yeah, you don't die if you exist, but you're sure close to it.
It sort of feels like we're close to that now, is what I'm thinking. Already. It's already feeling more
Speeding
like
up
that.
somehow more than I thought we could.
Accelerating at an accelerating rate. So it is. But ultimately it's unsustainable. That's the point that I'm getting at.
And I think it's a point that right and left politically are well aware of. Like, this is an issue that when Pete Buttigieg went on that podcast, and they were aware of it, and they're MAGA people, and they're like, yeah, they're hoarding wealth. It's bad.
Right.
This is an issue that's observable to a human that just isn't alive. That's the requirement to know this.
Yes, I think the part about it that where there's not like a connection in understanding, or where maybe everybody on the right versus everybody on the left isn't kind of understanding, is how much that influences our everyday lives.
Yeah, how bad is it? I think it's three things. How did we get here? How bad is it? And what do we do about it? I think because we can all observe the same thing, but then come from totally different conclusions about it. But it is definitely an issue everyone's aware of.
Yes.
So I don't think it's unfair for you to point out that clearly the system,
It's just an
as
observation.
running, is not sustainable. Maybe it can sustain us for, I don't know, however much longer, but clearly we are going to run the wheels off this thing and it's going to crumble. It just can't keep burning at 110% forever.
Does this make me an anti-capitalist, that I'm simply making the observation that the current trend we're on is unsustainable?
I'm making no moral claim about it. Well, we can get into everything. But as of the moment, this isn't a pro or anti thing. This is the car's about to explode. The machine is going to explode soon.
Yeah, we're running on red line. We're revved up so high.
We're running on red line, and we're somehow revving past that. And it just cannot survive. So we were talking last week. It didn't even make the final cut because it ended up being so boring. Because I thought for sure we were going to get some disagreement. And then you ended up being like, yeah, there was no disagreement. And so we were sitting here talking before we were recording about, how it got bad. Ronald Reagan. I won't even explain further.
How and when.
The reason America sucks is Ronald Reagan 99% of the time. It ties back to him and his presidency in some capacity. We'll move forward.
Thank you.
Because this situation's arisen before with big trusts and big, oligarchs and stuff like that. And Teddy Roosevelt, famous trust buster. Then FDR did the same thing.
By the way,
You're
not getting through an episode without a history lesson.
Can't get through that.
Actually, this episode's going to be very history heavy.
Yeah. And they both took a lot of action against it. Still ended up back here we are. So clearly something didn't totally solve about it.
Yes, it didn't fix everything back then.
Yeah. And so hopefully everybody can see where I'm going with this. And so
I can't, by the way. So
okay, good.
I'm with the few who still don't know where we're headed.
With the rise of the term of Marxism, so it's just back in common discourse.
Okay, right.
I thought I might give a history lesson a touch.
Okay.
So you don't throw around the word inaccurately, or you don't get accused inaccurately, or maybe accurately, I don't know. But right, because Kamala Harris is not a Marxist. Let's be very clear, right? And I think this is a man who's famous for critiquing the French system, the French capitalist system back in the day. That's all he did. Everything afterwards, I'm not talking about that. Soviet Union, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about just the man himself, the bearded man.
The man from which the name came.
That's only human we're talking about here and what he wrote about. Okay, later on we can discuss more. But so his whole thought was, I love the idea. He loved the French Revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity. He thought it was great. And then he thought after, it was about 100 years when he started writing, close to 100 years of their revolution having been done, or maybe less than that. And he was like, oh, they've completely failed. They've not brought liberty, equality, fraternity to anybody. And he thought that was bad. So between 1789 and 1799
so
was the 10 years of revolution and going from the monarchy to the first French Republic. Louis XVI was executed in 1793. America's is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yep.
The French's is liberty, equality, fraternity. Frankly, I prefer the French one.
Okay, yeah.
I like liberty, equality, fraternity a little better.
Fine.
But
we could argue the points, but yeah.
They're of the same four people who wrote these things. Like, it's basically the same thing.
Sure.
Anyway, so Marx says that's a beautiful thing. Great work, guys.
Yes.
And then he gets even older and he goes, you guys failed. Completely failed. Right? So he has a bunch of issues he takes with it.
What are the Marxist issues that Karl Marx wrote about 175 years ago
I know, right?
about the French?
It was the French. It was his inspiration.
Yeah.
And so he was arguing that it's the same critique you can critique now, is that you can claim you want liberty and freedom for everybody, but if you allow money and power and resources to just hoard, what freedom and liberty is there really? Right? So it's this positive and negative freedom thing that I'm always talking about is a man stranded in a desert, in a lawless land, in a desert. Is he free? Technically speaking, there's no laws. He could do whatever he wanted, however he wanted. However, he has no ability to do anything. So is he free?
A philosophical
argument. Yeah, there's not a right answer.
Yeah.
I would argue he's not free.
You could look at it like he's not free to do anything because there's nothing to do.
This is a big thing after slavery was abolished. Technically, the slaves were free.
But they couldn't do anything.
They weren't allowed to do anything. Or it was impossible. They were allowed to vote. But you had poll taxes, you had the grandfather clause, you had all these things. So technically they could vote.
Right.
But practically impossible. So the negative freedom is the slaves were freed and allowed to vote. We're not stopping you from doing anything in the law explicitly. Negative freedom. Positive freedom is you have the ability to pursue those freedoms. Do you think it's possible for you to open up a business to compete with Amazon?
Well, I think
legally,
yeah,
of course.
Yes. Well,
in a positive sense, no shot you can compete with Amazon. Economy of scale.
Sure.
Total.
No chance.
No chance. That's a great example, right? Go compete with Walmart.
Is that a capitalist system then? If I cannot start a business and compete?
I would say yes. I would say yes. There's several schools of thought.
But it's an unregulated.
But ultimately.
Monopolized.
I think people need to think about very clearly is if there's competition with business, by nature, one has to lose. And what happens when one loses? They're bought out, go bankrupt, and their market shares available to people. Or several, or they're absorbed.
Right.
Like that. And then the company who won just now is bigger. And now it's easier for them to go eat smaller companies. And they just keep growing. That's what Walmart did.
Sure.
Right?
Lots of examples of that, by the way.
Just an infinite examples.
Yep.
I won't even list them all.
Yep.
Microsoft's a big one. Walmart's the really obvious one.
Yep.
Killed small town America, or is a part of it.
Right. Small town retail.
Small town retail.
At least.
So this is an issue he had 175 years ago, which is still true today. And he argued that it's not possible for you to have achieved the freedom you're desiring if everyone has no money, no power, no freedom to do anything, to actually accomplish anything. And so that's an issue.
Yeah, but our brand in America is we're free to do whatever we want and build whatever we want.
This is true.
Okay, just to see where we are.
This doesn't conflict with that.
Okay.
This doesn't conflict with the American thought at all.
Okay, good.
Actually, just a funny thing, Marx wrote a lot of letters to Lincoln
Really?
about enduring the Civil War,
Oh, that's interesting.
about slavery. And like through the Civil War, he was like early on
Supporter of-
begging him to like make it about slavery and free the slaves. So that's just a fun fact. But yeah, so that was the big
Karl Marx is very anti-slavery.
shocker. Very much a freedom-loving man.
Karl Marx.
Very much a freedom-loving man.
Okay.
He argued in a lot of ways that the profit motive is a destructive force. Where, for example, if your kid is sick, how much are you going to pay to make them healthy? An infinite amount. There just isn't amount. Your kid needs to eat tonight. How much are you going to pay? There just isn't a price.
Right.
So
You'll
therefore,
pay what you have to.
Therefore, the curve of like price and demand and typically how that curve works doesn't apply
For things that you absolutely need.
because
If you had to pay for water, if you had to pay for air.
there is not a price
Yeah.
you would pay to not have that.
Right.
Right. So there's certain things that's a part of his critique. And so he also argued that if one person or one company owns everything, that's also bad and not freedom. And so
Because I'm not free to compete.
I'm not free to compete. I'm not
Free to start a business. I'm not
start a
free.
business. I'm not free to go to
enter the
something
marketplace.
different. I can't do anything. There's only one game in town, and it's this one company, and I'm screwed. So those kind of issues he had very briefly for everybody.
Yep. Good.
So then what's the solution to these things?
Yeah, let's talk about what a potential solution would be for a system that
So again,
becomes so bloated and top
Marx
heavy.
very barely spoke about government. There's barely any writings of his. I mean, they exist, but like most of his work is economics.
All right.
So anyone who tells you otherwise, you can ignore them immediately.
Interesting.
They don't know what they're talking about, at least with him specifically. So this is the big distinction with him. There's two kinds of property, private and personal.
Private property
and personal
property. He talks about two different kinds of property. Okay, this is...
And then
this
like
is-
public property,
all right, this is interesting. And then public property. Okay.
obviously. I mean, what do you think the difference is?
It's hard to say what the difference between personal property... because I'm thinking in his time when he was writing this in the 1850s or whenever it was.
It's still wholly relevant today. It hasn't changed.
right.
It just like might look different, but it's like the exact same situation.
Yeah, my personal property and my private property. I guess my personal property would be considered like something I can hold in my hand or walk out of the room, and my private property might be something that that's immovable, like land, for example. That's probably the only thing I can think of.
Pretty good. So personal property is anything that like basically that is in your house, anything that you use. You really use. Like your car is your personal property. Your house would be your personal property. You live in it. You use it.
My car, my iPhone.
Your car, your iPhone. It is not like cheap things. It can be all the expensive shit you use too. All that's your personal property.
My refrigerator.
This expensive laptop is my personal property.
Definitely.
I use it.
All right.
However,
That's not your private property?
no. So private property refers to production, but particularly production of wealth.
Private property.
Which is separate from money, and I'll explain. It's very simple. So private property would be this. You have a house, you live in a house. This is an example, I'm not saying you.
Yeah.
You live in a house.
Although I do live in a house.
Although you do live in a house, this is true. You also own several other houses you never use,
Okay.
and you rent them.
Okay, I can think
That's
of it.
private property. That is something you own that you don't use, you don't engage with. You don't even touch it, but you use it as a means to generate wealth for yourself.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Typically at the expense of other in some capacity. Typically, not always, but typically.
Sure.
Right? That would be that. Let's say I'm a business owner and I've literally never engaged in my business at all in so long.
I think a better example, let me just give you the best example.
Go ahead and give me a better example.
And one of the most destructive examples as well is called private equity.
Private equity, that's a new thing in modern life that he didn't have back then. They didn't have private equity.
But it is the modern example, especially the toxic modern
pinnacle of this issue he's talking about, where you say you own a business. This happened to Toys R Us, by the way. This is part of why that went away. A part of it, at least, was their company's not doing good. They need to do something. So a private equity fund, which
firm.
not business people, just a big bank account, basically, come in, buy it up. They don't work there. They don't do anything, and just extract as much money they can and destroy companies.
Yeah, and let it die.
And they do this all the time.
All the time. Yeah, all the time.
And so he argued that shouldn't be a thing. That's a bad thing that happens. If you're a person who works at a business, you're a business owner, but you work at your business, that's different.
Right.
That's okay.
Right.
Chill with that. That's great.
Right.
If you just own randomly businesses,
Yeah.
and you just sit at home on your couch.
So let's say I own 20 McDonald's franchises. Is that an example of my private property?
That would be 19 of them could be.
Yeah.
The one you work at wouldn't be.
Yeah. If I worked at any
If you worked at any of them.
Because I also own a few car dealerships.
Ooh, yeah, now you're starting to have a problem. So he argued that that is destructive to the freedom of individuals in the world. Ultimately, it's destructive to your freedom as an individual.
Because I deprived 19 other people from opening that McDonald's
Yeah, you deprive
franchise.
other people of owning things, of having things, of participating. Now, there's a whole economic side to this that I'll be exceedingly brief with. 1 minute. Here we go. So he has a theory of economics that is based around labor value, basically meaning everything you see in the world is made by somebody. And that's why it's valuable. So this water bottle, there's paints for the oils for the plastic. There are all these separate pieces. Has to be put together. So I could give you all of the stuff that's in this, just in separate piles on the table and say, that's a water bottle. But it's completely valueless. But it's the exact same makeup.
Right.
But if I make it a water bottle, all
Once
of a
it's
sudden,
assembled.
it's valuable to you.
Yeah. I can give you a pile of car parts that's useless, but
All the metal, everything you need for a car, but it means nothing to you.
Right.
But if I give you a car, that's extremely valuable. They're very expensive.
sure, got it.
He argues it's the act of assembly
Yeah.
and manufacture
That's the value of labor.
value of labor theory. That's his idea.
I mean, I think that you can look at art and say that that's exclusively labor value.
Exclusively, I could give you all the paints and everything in the Da Vinci, right? Da Vinci's or the Mona Lisa, I mean.
Yeah.
And I can hand it to you, like, here's the Mona Lisa.
Right.
That means nothing. Or I could give you the Mona Lisa. And you'd be like, holy shit.
I don't know. That's just a statement of fact. I mean, there is value in a thing that's been assembled than that hasn't been assembled. And I think that we can understand that. I think that anybody can accept that. A person might say, well, one day robots are going to make this. And well, okay, so there's,
A different value attached to that.
value in the robot work that was done. So anyway,
And that contrasts with the subjective theory of value, which is what the entire planet uses, by the way. It's a mesh. It's not a hard science,
Yep.
which is that there's not an inherent value in the assembly of an item. It's just, what does this mean to you?
Now
That's where the value comes from.
yeah, I mean, that's true with some things.
I think it's true as well.
with some things. Like, I mean, why is a pair of Yeezys as expensive as they are? It's just shoes, but
But it points to the subjective theory. I think both definitely have their
exist.
merits, and both exist, and both will always exist. Let's also be clear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Both versions of value are going to exist. In
It's
fact,
a part of why doctors are expensive.
in the art example that we just gave, the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, why is a Da Vinci so valuable where my beautiful art is not?
You could probably perfectly replicate the Mona Lisa, but it's not the Mona Lisa.
That's the
So
point.
I think both are true. That's why doctors are so expensive, because the labor and the thing you guys provide,
Right.
so much training, it's so specialized,
Yeah.
it's so hard to do,
Yep.
it's expensive.
Yeah.
That's not because you're a doctor is like a famous person, it's a job. It's the labor you put in.
Yeah, right. Well, it was the labor I put into
in-
acquiring the expertise to be able to do what I do.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. So I don't think it's a radical thought.
I don't think it's a radical thought. I think it's just a simple observation to me. I'm not hearing anything that sounds even remotely
And so
crazy.
the
here.
natural extension of that is,
What?
if the value of a product come from the assembly, and at his time particularly, it was like human beings 100% of the time.
Of course.
Now it's robots, it's a little different.
Right.
But then it goes to, well, then people, workers, have built the world
Yes.
completely.
We did.
So then
That's us.
he argues that if you own a business and the people, your employees, do 100% of everything. The only reason you as a business owner have anything is because everybody else is making something. Mm-hmm. Why don't we just give it to them? The people who made everything. Why don't they just have it? So this is the surplus value issue. So this is $5. Okay. All of the, let's say $2 for all the resources and $2 for the labor. There's $1 left, $5. Who does that go to?
Who does the dollar profit go to?
Typically the business or the shareholders.
The business owner or the ownership of the company.
Marx says that doesn't make any sense. The only reason you have a water bottle to sell is because your employees built you a water bottle to sell. So he says that dollar should just go back to them.
That whole dollar? Or maybe some part of that dollar?
Divvied.
Maybe.
Divvied or whatever, right? So he argues that.
Hold on, I got to stop.
Oh, yeah, stop me. This is the controversial part that everybody gets hung up on.
In a system like that, how the hell, if I can't keep that dollar that I make on this bottle of water, then how the hell am I supposed to become a billionaire?
I have terrible news for everybody who was hoping to be a billionaire selling water bottles. It's just not going to happen. Unfortunately, what's going to happen, I know this really sucks. What's going to happen is these people are going to be able to feed their families and give their families a better life. I know that really sucks. I know you don't want people to live in better housing and have better access to food and healthcare. But unfortunately, that's what happens. So you don't get to be a billionaire. I'm sorry. Your employees have to live better lives instead of you being a billionaire. I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but
I'm under the impression by looking at Instagram and TikTok that it's possible for anybody to become a billionaire if they wake up at 4 a.m. and do a cold plunge and work 18 hours a day for 8 days a week and no avocado toast and no Starbucks. And I too can become a billionaire. So that is contrary to what I'm told on social media, that I can become a billionaire. Because it's my capitalist system, American right. There's nothing more American than being able to exploit workers,
there is
not give
more
them that extra dollar, keep it for myself and become a billionaire. That is America.
That is, well, yes, that is the most American. So the thing that Marx advocated for is called a worker cooperative.
/S, sarcasm.
Oh, sarcasm. Yeah, sarcasm. The thing that Marx, what it ends up coming is a worker cooperative, where we're not going to eradicate a CEO. That's insane. That's a worker. They made a lot of money, but they work.
Well, somebody has to organize all of that.
So there has to be a CEO.
So there has to be smart people.
There has to be managers.
Right.
We're not eliminating man. It's not going to be total chaos. So don't get that twisted. What happens is we're not going to just have some random person just taking all the extra money who doesn't add anything. Does that make sense? The CEO is not the business owner.
Well, they could be.
Hold on. Could be. I'm talking about systems places where that's not the case.
Right.
If the case is the business owner is working there, then nothing is stripped of them. They're a worker.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then.
I'll answer the question for you.
You say that the business owner may or may not work there. So let's say the business owner doesn't work there. The business owner just owns the business. And I've given every single dollar that could possibly be profited from back to all of the people. How can I, as the business owner, make any dollars whatsoever if I'm not working at my business? Is there a system that could be designed where $2 for the stuff, $2 for the other stuff, so there's $1 left of profit? Instead of giving the whole dollar back, we give some fractional distribution of that dollar so the business owner can still keep something.
I suppose I would ask then, if I'm rolling exclusively off this system as I understand it, what is the business owner adding to the company?
Nothing. Nothing whatsoever.
So then what sense would it make to give the business owner anything?
None.
Okay.
Of course not. But right now, in the current system,
they get a lot.
Not only can the business owner squeeze that dollar, but
they squeeze the $2 for the workers too, actually.
But they squeeze the workers' dollars and they squeeze the other dollars and they continue squeezing and then they continue buying up the competitors. And so we're so far
from this system.
That is there some sort of a compromise?
We don't even need to compromise. There currently exists a company in the United States that is a $100 million company, 500 plus employees, headquarters here, founded here, and you can go to the store, your local grocery store, and see their product.
Really?
It'd be Bob's Red Mill.
Bob's Red Mill.
It's a milling company. So they do oats and flour and cornmeal and stuff like that. So you go down the flour aisle or the oats section, and
really?
you'll see a little bag that says Bob's Red Mill, and it's a workers' cooperative.
Huh.
So it's not a completely eradicated business owner system like I'm talking about.
Yeah, there are EOCs.
But it is extremely close. This is the big difference from them to what most companies have. If you're a worker at a company like McDonald's, like a food service place. So at McDonald's, you guys have sold last month 10,000 burgers, and everybody's paid $10 an hour. Next month, you sell 20,000 burgers. You continue to only make $10 an hour. So even if you guys are producing more, making more, selling more,
Right.
nothing changes for you. At Bob's Red Mill, that changes. So they have a base safety, right, of like you give this pay, but as that company grows, they do better. Each employee does better.
I would make the argument that that would also produce more motivated workers.
It's shocking that if a person can see the fruits of their labor, they'll want to do more. That's a crazy thing that nobody's ever thought of before. That's a new thing you just thought of now. Who thought if you did something and you saw all the results of it and the benefit? Imagine. You would want to do more.
/S, sarcasm.
Sarcasm.
Thank you.
But anyway, I want to point out that a lot of this stuff exists, or stuff kind of similar exists.
Okay, so what about a person who says, I mean, if that's how you want to do your company, then you're free to do that. Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're...
There's nobody stopping you.
True. I mean, if you want to free your slaves, go ahead, but I'm not gonna.
Ooh, scandalous.
So it's the same. I'm being dramatic.
No, you're being absolutely right, though.
But it's the same argument. It's like, I mean, if you care about your slaves so much that you want them to be free, fine. I won't stop you. I'm not doing it. No, I don't really care if you don't want to or not. You're just going to have to because it's the right thing to do. It's better for people.
It sounds like a beautiful
It does sound
idea.
beautiful. Well, it exists in the world. So don't anyone tell you it's like utopian or idealistic. It
already exists.
It's all
works.
It exists and works. Not pure, maybe exactly, but far closer than anything else we have. It exists and it works, and they're big companies.
I get the impression from any conservative media and the slanderous use of Marxism as a bad word. I'm not hearing anything in here that sounds scary to me.
His desire was to live in a world that achieved the ends of the American Revolution and the French Revolution, freedom and liberty. He thought those were beautiful things, as any good American should, by the way. And he said, unfortunately, the way they're running the ship right now isn't doing it.
They're allowing wealth to consolidate and et cetera. Even in the 1800s, that
was bad back then.
It was starting to happen.
It happens quick. It was happening back then too.
Yeah.
And so he was saying, you guys aren't doing what you set out to achieve. You need to achieve what you said you would. Freedom for every person in your country. And so his main goal was that the governmental system is good. Democracy is great. You guys have that. The other half is economy and economics that influences literally everything.
That also has to be good.
Also has to be good, and you guys have failed. Hence why he never really talked about government, because he's like, democracy is amazing.
It's good.
It's good.
Right.
In principle, it's good. So the whole point, he's just trying to make sure we achieve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's his dream.
Or life, liberty, and fraternity.
Liberty, equality, fraternity.
Liberty, equality, fraternity. Thank you.
It's not his desire to be anti-American or fight the American way of life. It's probably to achieve it better.
Yes, a more fully realized vision.
He doesn't want any American ever to be homeless, without food, without a job, without security. He doesn't want. That's not American. That's not freedom loving. Not freedom loving to allow everyone to suffer.
Yeah, because if you think of a time pre-America, if you think about pre-America, this is interesting to think about. I've actually never thought about this in this way, but learning about Marxism, I'm actually thinking.
Forces you to think a bit.
Yeah, it does. So if democracy never existed and there was never the freedom anywhere in the world to operate business within a capitalist model, to become a billionaire, the only way to ever be a billionaire would be to be, born into royalty.
Yeah.
Which would have been the way it was all throughout history as much as we know about it, until the beginning of the Great American Experiment, which is probably, just to remind everybody how incredible that changed the course of humanity. That moment in
Yeah,
history
it really,
in America.
It really did alter the course. It inspired the French, and then
Most of the world is,
and then the French bled into Europe, and then through that, almost everybody.
it's really incredible how it
You'd
all
be surprised
started.
how many forms of government look like ours.
And we've been to the battlefield. It's so cool. But so here's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is that when Jefferson and Madison and these great thinkers of the revolutionary time were at the beginning of designing our government and writing our constitution, there were no big corporations.
Not like they are now, not really.
It's not the same thing
Not at all,
like it is now.
No.
Especially not operating within a capitalist model.
Yeah, it was definitely a different
Completely
function.
Completely different thing. A completely different thing.
Rich people, but it behaved very differently.
Definitely. So it may have been hard for them to conceive at the time, just like they couldn't conceive of this laptop and this iPhone,
How messed up it would become.
how messed up it could become, even within the beautiful democratic system that was built and
beautiful
designed.
governmental system. So you need people afterwards be like, they really tried and we couldn't succeed on the ideas, but we need to fix some things. We did it with slavery.
Yeah.
We've done this a ton of times in the U.S.
Right.
At first, only landowning white men could vote.
Right.
That was it. If
Yeah.
you were a white guy, but you didn't own anything,
No women.
get out of here. You're not voting. You don't own land. Go.
Right.
And we realized, to achieve the American dream, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we have to let everybody vote. We actually can't have slaves. Actually, that's not American.
Right.
We've done this constantly.
Yeah.
So I would say the American thing to do is to consistently try to achieve the dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to our utmost ability.
Which would require
Not hoarding wealth.
a change in the capitalist approach. It can still be a fully capitalist system that's employee owned.
Yes. This is the distinction I want to make. The system you experience is markets. When you go to the store, you're experiencing a market called Publix, called Walmart, called Target, whatever. It's a market.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away. What goes away is when you buy your milk, when you buy your clothes, who's going to get paid? That's what's going to change. Who's getting all the money? So we're going to pay,
That's it. That's all that changes.
the importer will get some money, and we'll have to pay some rent probably somewhere, some taxes.
Yep.
And then instead of the CEOs or the business owners of all these people in these private equity funds just siphoning all this wealth, what if we just pay the workers more? Your price doesn't have to go up at all. The price of your goods can probably actually go down, probably some, with how much money is siphoned out.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely doable for a fully realized version of this, but I think that it could be possible to...
It's fully achievable in the world we live in right now.
Oh, yeah.
In the U.S.
Yeah, we could...
Hard, but it wouldn't ruin the average American life at all.
If we flipped the switch...
Tomorrow.
If we snapped the Thanos finger, the thing that would change is that everybody working anywhere would vote, because they're now a part owner in their company. They would all vote to raise wages for themselves and all of these things, and to moderate wages.
Here's a great
and all
example.
Of that.
Does anybody here watching have a manager that is terrible at their job? I've had several who don't know what's happening, who are messing everything up constantly.
Yeah.
And the person who answered yes to that, do you have a coworker who's basically doing the manager's job?
Yeah, right. And should be the manager.
And should be the manager? Does anybody experience that? I have. Have you?
Everywhere.
Every human has.
Everywhere, all over, every place.
Why shouldn't then the people who are doing all the work be like, okay, well, we want the best person here.
Oh,
You ready for it? That might sound a little spooky. That's a lot of responsibility. You vote for the president every 4 years. You vote for the most powerful human being in existence every 4 years.
Yeah.
So don't worry about pressure. You already believe in democracy.
Yes.
Has anybody here voted before?
Right.
You believe in democracy.
We already believe in democracy. Why can't we have a democratic capitalist system?
Make it better. Yeah.
Well, the only thing that
If
would
there's
happen...
if there's a CEO who's wanting to fire everybody and take all your pay away,
everybody votes that person out.
goodbye.
Right. It goes beyond unions.
It's different than a union. And I don't think it's a scary thing unless you being treated better and making more scary to you, then I guess if you want.
And I think the thing that people need to understand, because they're going to say, well, everything's going to get more expensive if all the employees, if they decide to raise their wages, then everybody's making more money.
Yep.
Yeah, no. But they're not taking money away from the consumer, the end consumer. If you buy this bottle of water, it is still $5, just like it was before.
Except that extra dollar that went to the business owner goes to them.
It goes to all the employees instead. So the only people that are affected are the owners and shareholders.
The oligarchs, the billionaires, the private equity firms.
The centimillionaire, 100 millionaires.
That's who gets affected.
Those are the people.
In the same way, if
stockholders.
The same way if a business were to hike their prices, probably people wouldn't buy from them. Those workers are going to feel the same pain. If they hike their prices, then people won't want to buy from them.
Mm-hmm.
This already happens in the world. When you go to the store and there's two products, are you going to buy the cheaper one?
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah.
And so that's the battle. So it doesn't seek to eradicate the world as we know it.
Yeah.
It seeks to optimize.
I have to say, though, that a part of why capitalism works and why innovation and industrialization has happened is all this investment, and a part of it, like a big part of the modality of how investment is made into a thing is by buying stock in a company. Mm-hmm. We make our company a public stock, and now there's all this investment of cash. I could see also a version of Marxism in a modern world where there's some kind of a hybridization of the ability for external people to invest. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
My question to you is simple. Mm-hmm. Are you
a Marxist?
A Marxist.
Economics is tricky. There's a lot to know about it. But assuming all of the wiki articles and the paragraphs are true.
Which of course,
obviously. So withholding the fact of an economist might come in here and be like, here's why you're wrong.
I'm open to hearing that, by the way.
Of course, if it really is, oh, this system's way worse, then that's important.
Why would Marxism or some version of a Marxist
some modern approach,
some modern version, right? Yeah.
It would have to be an updated version, like obviously.
Of course it would. Would some sort of an employee own?
I'm going to say this very clearly, not the Soviet Union and not China. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yes, that is a set.
Everybody associates with that, and because they claimed it. Be very clear.
No, it's still fully a democracy exactly as it is.
The U.S. today is closer to Marxism than the Soviets were. Let's be very clear about that. Okay? So I'm not talking about the Soviet Union. We're going to hedge all that, and not China, not Vietnam, and not Venezuela, none of them.
We're talking about our American democracy
as it is today,
with an economic model that benefits employees and people and not stakeholders, not shareholders,
billionaires and oligarchs,
right?
And people like that.
Yes, so it's just a change of our economic model.
Mm-hmm. Just where the money's distributed, almost.
I cannot wait to hear what people have to say about.
To answer your question, yes, I would love to live in a world where everyone's treated better, everybody has more access to freedom and more ability to do things.
I also would love to live in that world.
So if that makes me a Marxist, then I guess so be it. It doesn't make me a Soviet.
A Soviet Marxist?
I don't believe in that.
I'll be very interested to hear what people have to say about Marxism in the comments.
Again, try to be honest with it. If we talk about the Soviets here, I will rant and rave for hours on how it's bad. And I'll agree with you in the comments. Right. I'm going to get one.
It's like, that's not what we're talking about.
We're going to get a comment, and I'm agreeing with you, commenter. I don't like the Soviet Union. I've already agreed with them, so now I can ignore them. Or agree with them. I'm saying what I've read here and what I've talked about here is that good. This is the thing about Marxism. It scares the rich, the oligarchs.
What is it about Marxism that scares the rich and the oligarchs?
It scares the oligarchs. So naturally it scares CNN and MSNBC and Fox News alike.
Because they are all owned by
rich people.
Rich people, shareholders.
So when you go on TikTok, you listen to these wealthy people, these wealthy business owners, and they say something, well, business owners take all the risk. They do all this investment. They're taking the risk. What is the risk they're talking about? I want to be really honest with that. I'm not trying to get a gotcha. What is a business owner risking?
Starting a business.
If it fails, what are they risking?
Their money.
And then what do they have to do if they fail the business? They have to.
I mean, they lost their money.
And then what does a person who needs money do?
Well, I mean, then they would go get a job.
So there we go. So a business owner is risking not being a worker, not being an employee, is what they're risking, most likely. I'm excluding for people who are being so irresponsible. I'm ignoring them.
Right.
They're being irresponsible. a regular human who's just trying to make a business and it fails.
Yes.
And then what happens?
Which happens.
Happens. And then what happens?
Mostly. Yeah. Yeah. Then they go
They
work.
just get a job.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us. Now, when I work at a business, what am I risking? Well, a lot of things could happen. We could all have laybacks to make, cutoffs to make more money for the business owner. And then I just don't have a job.
Yeah. You could just get fired.
Yeah. So a business owner, I want to hedge that in here too, because that's an argument that you hear. The business owners take the risk. What do they risk?
Yeah.
Maybe they lose a lot of money. Sure, that sucks. I'm not going to say that doesn't suck. That would suck.
Isn't that what capitalism is, though?
Yeah, you can't complain about this thing that you're, yeah.
I mean, isn't that what,
then,
I mean, if you suck at business and you can't make it, then
you suck
you go
at
work.
business. Yeah.
Right. So that is
The
capitalism.
risk is to not be a worker. That's what they're risking. Think about it just for a second. I'm starting a business. I'm risking everything. What is everything? Are you going to go to jail if you fail? Like this.
I'm risking not having to be a worker, right?
Exactly. If a business owner on Fox News is saying, I'm risking everything, risking what? Well, unless you're being crazy, you're not going to go to jail.
Right.
Assuming.
Yeah.
You're not going to go to prison.
Right. You're not going to actually risk.
You're not going to lose your life.
No, money.
No.
No, they're always talking
You're not
about
going to be
money.
severely injured and incapacitated. No, you'll just have to go get a job like everyone else.
So that's what it is about
So
Marxism.
that argument,
or the,
the argument that you hear all the time, right? I hear it all the time. You hear it a lot with around Bernie, particularly,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
Easy kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. They're not risking
If you think it through, it doesn't make a lot of
losing
sense.
their life. They're just like, oh, you just,
No, money. They're just risking money. That's it. They say they take all the risk. That means they're risking money.
and that just means they have to get a job. When I graduate high school and I want to drive around to the movie theater with my friends, I have to go get a job.
But the people, by the way, the people on the news or TikTok or the rich people who say that we're the ones who take all the risk and in a capitalist model, to say that, yes, they're the ones that are risking all the money, but they never risk all their money.
No, they don't.
I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like,
Sure, it happens, but it's not common.
a better word is that we gamble.
And it's usually not, it's just gambling.
We speculate.
It's gambling.
We gamble. That's the word. So anytime you hear somebody say, a pundit, a business owner, a rich person on the news, that
risking.
we're the ones who take all the risk, what they're saying is,
I'm gambling.
we're the ones who are gambling. We're the ones who can't afford to gamble.
Yes, that's it. You can afford to gamble. That's what the stock market is a lot of the time. Crypto is that 100%.
Yeah.
It's just gambling.
Totally.
It's just a different form of gambling. So that I wanted to hedge that.
Especially for an ape like me.
But so it can, so that argument can be I guess it could be a gotcha if you've never thought it through. It's a simple thing you think through. Okay, what are they risking?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll take them at 100% of their word. They're risking what? Being a failed gambler.
Yeah.
And then what happens when a gambler loses all their money in a casino?
Yep.
They have to go back to work next day and make their money back. So we already believe that. So if someone goes to the casino and loses all their money, they should be immune and they should be able to get a handout from the government?
Of course not.
Or are they supposed to go back to work because they lost money? They go back to work. So we already believe that. So what's it any different for a business owner?
You're making a powerful case.
I wanted to hedge that argument.
Well, the oligarchs, the billionaires, they're watching.
They don't want you to be paid more.
Yeah, they don't want you to be paid more.
So, okay.
I see why they're scared. I see why they would be so afraid of this. I see why they would make Marxism a bad thing and call everybody a Marxist and make it.
It's a boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's the American boogeyman.
Yeah, 175-year-old boogeyman.
Yep. But when you read this, even the wiki article, you go, well, none of this really contradicts anything in the American system here. Not really at all.
I mean, it says nothing of democracy and voting and representatives.
If anything,
and
it's
senators
supporting
and
all of that. Say we love democracy. Let's do more of it.
I don't know why someone would be scared of it. All we can do is shrug our shoulders.
I think Americans, we're supposed to like democracy here. So that's a totally different episode. I just wanted to at least educate the people on, I've heard that term a lot. And so I just wanted to educate everybody on what they're actually saying without, because they don't mean Marxist, they just mean you hate Trump. That's what they mean.
What they've been throwing around Marxist as a bad word for a long time.
Yeah, since like before World War I, pretty much. Forever, they've been saying it. So yeah, so that,
Is Marxism bad? Is it really bad? Is some modern version of Marxism bad?
I don't know.
I don't know.
It
Doesn't sound like it.
sure doesn't sound like it. And
Sounds Sounds pretty good to me.
Businesses already kind of do it sometimes, and they seem pretty successful. So,
this is gonna
good episode.
Well, this is gonna stir up some shit in the comments.
Kick the hornet's nest on this one. That's a wrap.